Elisa? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I certainly can.
All righty.
All right, let me just get a different view here. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Law and Rules Committee meeting. We are going to begin our meeting. At present here with us is Alderman Scott Childress, Ray Scott Childress, Michael Oliveri, and Michelle. We're going to ask you to stand in for committee members. Carl Frankel. Well, no, we're not, because
Carl
there
Frankel's
he
here.
is.
Apologies for my tardiness.
No worries. How you doing?
Thank you very much.
Good, good, good. Okay, it is,
So what about, is Barbara?
Barbara will not be here. Barbara's excused.
Okay, so what I mean, staying in for Barbara?
I think we're fine. We have 4 of us here. So I think we're fine.
Just want to catch you for
Four.
1 minute.
Yeah, which you're just welcome to stay. All right, so it's 6:34, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Everybody have an agenda?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, here you go. Yeah, okay.
You're good, Michelle?
Yeah. Can I just point a letter, ask Matt if I can be a voting member for this evening? Since I am a member of the council, and there's only 4 present.
Generally, if there's a quorum,
Yeah, we have 4.
then they don't need a substitute, but if there's anything where somebody's basically has a conflict and can't vote, then there's not a quorum, so that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, so first item on the agenda, and welcome to all of you. Welcome. First item on the agenda is the affordable housing standards payment in lieu criteria. I'm going to ask Bartek to come on up. He has a,
Should we do John first?
we do John first. Oh, yeah, we had you. You did wait here a long time. Very
I just
patient.
thought that was the norm.
Very
We try to keep people for 2 days. Yeah, hey, you gotta earn it. you know?
Okay. Bartek, is that line okay with you? You don't mind waiting? Okay, John, why don't you come up? We're going to change the order of
Paid to
the
be here.
Thank you.
agenda.
Underpaid.
And move, thank you, Randy. Move number 3 up.
Awesome. Sorry. I also just want to say real fast that the city of Kingston today peeled up Main Street from one end to the other. And everybody out there was doing a really great job. So.
Oh, you recognized us. We were wearing disguises.
Oh, well, there you go. But the city employees who were out there did a nice job. They worked hard. It was like fun.
Yeah, seriously, I'm always amazed at what they do.
I'm still liaison for DPW.
Oh,
Yes.
I thank them.
Okay, so this is the sale of the street, the easement request. Anything else you want to tell us
Oh.
about it?
I think what I had learned after the last meeting was that, this committee passed on to the common council, I guess, the proposed request for purchase, and a deed was ordered. I don't think that was done in a manner that would allow it to be back on your agenda for this evening. However, in my request to purchase, I did also ask for an easement pending a final sale, because I guess from my perspective, I would think that granting easements is relatively basic real estate stuff for a city. So I was hoping we could do that pending the final sale possibility, so that we could start to develop the land and eventually pay taxes. But so that's why I would like to see if that could pass through. I think that I'm willing to pay consideration to the city for access. That seems appropriate. My basic understanding of law in real estate transactions, I don't do a lot of law. in that area, but the expense of a permanent easement is relatively insignificant. I'd be hopeful or willing to work out something where if I pay reasonable consideration for the easement, that could be applied toward final purchase price. I'm more than willing to make the city a second and third, so the city would expose no liability for any property damage or damage to a human being that may arise during the development or any time thereafter. I'd be willing to provide proof of insurance every year. I'd be willing to pay a premium upfront so that the city doesn't have to worry about anything in that respect. And I suppose that's.
So, I guess my first question is, we can,
Rick.
was a deed, do we have a deed drawn up for that?
So basically, there's a procedure for basically the sale of paper streets, abandoned streets.
Mhm.
So as part of that procedure, the first step is that the common council sends a referral to the planning board to contact the engineer and to have the deeds drawn up. There is certain rights that go to all the adjacent property owners. So it's not just one deed that's drawn up, there's multiple deeds drawn up potentially. And then the property owners are getting basically like a right of first refusal for certain portions. So that already went to the common council, that was passed by the common council, the planning board and the engineer's office are in the process of dealing with that process. The second part having to do with the easement agreement, an easement agreement was drafted by my office and reviewed by Mr. DeGasperis' attorney, Jessica Glass, and went back and forth. At the last meeting, Barbara had not reviewed the details, was not aware of the details of the easement agreement, so she has, since then I've spoken with her multiple times. She is aware of it. The one thing she just wanted to make clear is that this is not something that is just being given away, that it is being sold for consideration. So the only thing that was changed in the easement from the initial draft that was agreed upon in March has to do with just making sure the wording with the number and everything reflects that the value is determined by the office of the assessor and agreed upon by the parties. The agreement does include waivers of liability, indemnification for the city, the insurance requirements, not only during construction of the driveway, but while the driveway is being maintained. It lists additional responsibilities for maintaining the driveway. It, in addition to the completion of the driveway, it only allows for the ingress and egress. The city retains all the rights. There is a water line that does go adjacent to where the driveway will be, so the city can go on its own property at any point along that driveway to make repairs and do whatever is necessary for the maintenance of the city's property. So
it sounds like everything's in works.
to my knowledge, there's no outstanding issues.
And what is the considerations we have to?
Well, that is something the assessor basically determines the final figure.
And we have not gotten. to
3
that
million,
point
did
yet.
you say?
No.
I understand that.
It's a
The
big-
Gasperis may have had ordered an assessment as well, so that can be submitted to our assessor, but ultimately,
But ultimately, everything is lined up except for the final consideration, is that correct?
the actual amount determined by the assessor, who I don't know if you're aware, he has been out of the office this week.
Okay.
We bid on.
I'm going to have a public hearing,
What was that?
a public hearing.
It shouldn't require a public
I
hearing.
thought it did in the code.
I think for the sale, not for the easement.
Yeah, this would just be a notice to the neighbors.
Yeah.
And so does that come back to the council then, once all that is drawn up and then?
Yeah, so basically, if you refer it to the council would have to review the entirety of the easement agreement, including the sale price that the assessor basically says is the value of this property right that we would be selling.
Okay.
So what is the action that you or is being asked of us at this point?
So well, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I guess Yeah, to pass it on to the council so that the council can vote on it.
Well, and if-
I'm sorry to persist, and the council, by the time it gets to the council, the number will be in there?
That would be the intention, and obviously if the number wasn't in there, the council would have to table any decision on that.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
So, well, just a little bit more clarification. So tonight, then, we're not actually taking any action until we see that, or are we taking action saying that this is fine?
I don't see any reason why you can't take any action tonight, because basically that it's, the easement agreement is dependent on the value that the assessor determines
Right,
for it. So what our city assessor determines is the value,
that's it.
and that would be what the action.
Okay. So then, all right, so.
So largely this is
anybody-
on old business because it was on business.
Last meeting.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for John or for Matt?
I'm good with moving forward, I don't know what the procedure is for that.
Well, we would motion
We don't need any motion.
because it's old business.
Well, yeah, it's still under, we're waiting for the final piece of.
Well, that's a decision you guys can decide and say
Right,
that
that's
we
what I
don't want
asked.
to, or that we are going
So,
to move to,
so we could move tonight that we grant the easement.
well, you're
But,
not granting, but yeah, go forward to the council that they consider granting this easement based on sales price that is determined by the office of the assessor. So, and I can provide the draft and I just had us right there with the change here, so the amount, the value determined by the office of the assessor and agreed upon by the parties.
So that we move forward with granting the easements and that it be placed before the council. For the sum of the value determined by the office of the assessor and agreed upon by the parties. Yes? All right. So then we do.
Do we do
Need
need
a
a motion?
motion for this. Yes.
Motion. Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any noes?
No,
No.
not yet, we gotta get through the common council.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right, see you. Thanks for See you. You're welcome.
Okay, next, all right, so we're gonna have Bartek come on up. Thank you for waiting.
There was the issue of Greg talking about streets, paper streets, if we want.
Do you want
We have that as the lawyer session, so we
Right.
can do it at the end.
Yeah, we'll wait, yeah.
I'm good.
Hey, Lisa, if you could let me share my screen, please.
Yeah, you should be all set.
Thanks. Okay, so as you all are probably aware, in the form-based code, there's certain affordable housing requirements. Any developer could meet those requirements by building the units on site, or they can also make an affordable housing contribution. In order to make that affordable housing contribution, that developer would need common council approval. The code says that when the common council is deciding to accept or reject that approval, it will be using a set of standards passed separately from the zoning code. In our last deep dive discussion, the council requested that I work on potential draft criteria that the common council should consider. So that is what I have done tonight and what I'll briefly go over. Because the code isn't passed yet, I'm not asking you to pass this set of criteria tonight, mostly just looking for initial feedback or reaction. Okay, so there are 5 criteria that we're proposing. The first is consistency with other development and investment initiatives. So even if a project doesn't include the affordable units on site, is it consistent with our comprehensive plan and other housing goals that we have? Other community benefits. Maybe the project isn't providing affordable housing units on site, but it's providing a public park. It's made a local hiring commitment, some other clear community benefit. Community outreach. Has the developer worked with the council member in that ward and or other community or neighborhood groups to receive buy-in for the project? Availability of affordable housing, right? What is the context of the neighborhood? Is there other affordable housing nearby? Is there a need for affordable housing in that neighborhood? And finally, feasibility. So in this case, it would be if the affordable housing, if the developer provides clear evidence that this project will not happen if I have to provide the affordable housing units on site. There might be many reasons why it would be unfeasible. For instance, the developer maybe can't get financing for providing affordable housing units on site. So there's 5 criteria, and there's a 0 to 3 rating score. So 0 is criteria not met, 1 is low level of compliance with criteria, 2 is medium level, 3 is high level. Using this matrix, a project would, at minimum, need to score 10 points or higher to be eligible for the in-lieu payment. The 10-point threshold basically means that, on average, they have a medium level of compliance with the criteria. Okay.
Are there any sort of like, and there can't be any zeros or anything like that? Or it's just keep one number that adds up?
One number that adds up. Because certain criteria, right, they might not be relevant necessarily. So I do have here that I sent 2 examples just to give you an idea of how this might work. So here, developer proposes to build a 10-unit building on Broadway. They would be required to include 1 affordable housing unit. However, the developer is requesting to use the in-lieu payment. They have provided proof that they cannot obtain subsidy for the affordable housing unit. The project would add residential density, along the Broadway corridor, which is consistent with our comprehensive plan. And there's also an affordable housing development right across the street from this project. And the developers also held 2 meetings with the community and invited business owners and neighbors to provide feedback on the project. In this example, based on the description of this project, the average sum is 11, which exceeds the threshold of 10. So the in-lieu payment should be granted. Example number 2. Here, developer proposes to build a 20-unit project on a vacant lot in the Stockade area, near the Stockade area. The developers have worked with the council member of the ward and also have consulted with neighbors and historic preservation experts on the design of the project. And also by developing an empty lot, the development is consistent with our comprehensive plan. But the developers have not shown that the project would not be feasible if they didn't actually provide affordable units on site. And there's a clear lack of affordable housing in the area. In this example scoring sheet, they receive an 8. So in this case, the common council should deny the in-lieu request. So there, those 2 examples, but basically there's 5 different, these 5 different criteria that balance different aspects of a project. And, the threshold is, I think, appropriately high to guarantee, the developer really have to put in a good faith effort in order to be granted an in-lieu payment. And this is meant to guide, hopefully, guide the common council and if and when there's an in-lieu payment request and provide clear criteria for the decision making. So that was my intent.
So that it
Yes.
fits in the 5 criteria, but not fit in the screen. Yeah, that's good.
The 5 criteria. So the first one, so if there's a developer that wanted to build and he wanted the payment in lieu, rather than putting in the affordable housing, he would have to show that he cannot get financing and to build, or
Right.
to build affordable housing.
Right, that is one of the criteria, which is feasibility, right? So the developer would say, listen, the bank will not let me provide financing, will not give me financing for this project if I have to provide this affordable housing unit, and here's a letter, right, from the bank. Now, that alone will not grant them the in lieu, would not give them enough points, right? There's 5 different criteria, so even if they get a 3 on feasibility, you still need 7 points. They need to do the community outreach, right?
Right.
They need to make sure their project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, but it is one of the factors.
And so, but how is all of this, community outreach, for instance? Now, how do you determine whether that community outreach was sufficient, or, you know, if they were doing it the correct way, or if people were really involved in this project?
The burden of proof is on the developer in this case, right? And the criteria, you know, they would have to show that they have made a good faith effort
Mhm.
to do outreach in the community. The criteria also mentions the council member for the ward that the project is located in.
Mhm.
So ideally, the council member representing that ward would be involved
Mhm.
and can not vouch for the developer, but speak to the efforts that were or were not made.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you know the answer, but how many deals were lost with our current code, how we have it now with this?
You mean how many housing projects?
Yeah, because I like, the way our laws are right now, 6 or more units, I think it is, 7?
6 or more units.
Yeah, currently, they have to have one available as low income. So I'm curious, how many, do you know, like, how many deals there were where someone's like, hey, I want to do this, but I can't get the financing? I'm just, I'm trying to understand like where maybe this is, like, is this an issue that we have to consider this in lieu thing, or is this?
How many deals? Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, I can't answer that question because I'm not sure. I mean, I can tell you the number of units that that the current standard is actually created, right, which is less than 5. But I can't speak to how many units might have been lost. You know, part of the problem is that we're not building enough housing, of course.
We just passed it in what, 2020 or 21, right, during the pandemic, so there wasn't a lot of opportunity to build either, so I don't think it's.
I mean, the zoning code as a whole recognizes that we need to give flexibility to developers in order to produce housing, right? So maybe our housing, our parking requirements are too high. We need to give additional flexibility on our parking requirements. As an example, right? This is the whole intent of the zoning agreement. The in lieu payment option recognizes that flexibility might be needed for the affordable housing requirements as well. But those developers are not let off the hook, right? They still have to pay their fair share and make this affordable housing contribution. But you know, we've gone this extra step here because that option requires common council approval, right? So you know, most affordable housing requirements of any municipality statewide, right? Most requirements also have an in lieu option, right? Because there just needs to be some flexibility in some cases. So that's the intent with the in lieu option. I'm not sure, I'm not sure how many developers will actually utilize this option. If I had to guess, it would be very low. You know, I spoke to New Rochelle, which is one of the municipalities in New York that has affordable housing requirements similar to ours. It also has an in lieu option, and they've been building a lot of housing. And they said, you know, only one developer has chosen to exercise this option, right, out of dozens of different projects. So if I had to guess, it would be low intake.
Okay, again, it was just curiosity, that, you know, are we losing deals because of it?
Right, yeah.
Do we know what New Rochelle, was that on the memo? I don't remember, I'm sorry.
It was on the memo.
And how deep was their affordability?
It's similar to, I
Our
can't remember,
military zoning,
it's
yeah.
pretty similar to ours, I don't remember the exact numbers, but.
Was that on
It's,
the memo that we got?
yeah.
Okay.
So a couple of questions or observations. First of all, maybe this is just me being naive. I don't really understand the availability of affordable housing criterion. I mean, it seems to me that you would want affordable housing, especially where there wasn't affordable housing in the vicinity. I'm reading
Right.
this as the opposite.
No, the intent is exactly what you stated. If there isn't any affordable housing in the neighborhood, then they would receive a low score in that case.
And why? Because wouldn't it be that we want them there, particularly because there wasn't other affordable housing?
That's exactly what I'm saying,
Okay.
right? If there isn't affordable housing in the ward, right, then we would,
So the more affordable housing, the lower the score?
the higher the score.
And I just don't understand, wouldn't we want to incentivize people to build affordable housing where there wasn't a surface prime?
That's exactly right. Like if there's no affordable housing in the neighborhood, then they would receive a low score in this.
If they didn't build, if they didn't want to,
If they didn't want to do.
Oh, I
if
see,
they
okay,
didn't want
now,
to do
okay.
affordable
I went through my brain.
if they didn't want to
Thank you for
develop.
clarifying. Let me go on to one where I know it feels like I such opposing. Although I guess you'd be the judge of that. It seems to me you might want to have a stop on something, which means like, if there's a low score, forget about it. And I'm thinking about community outreach. If a developer is not prepared to do sufficient community outreach, I say, go home. Right? It's not a score. It's like, if you get a 1 or a 0 on that, we don't want it. And I would suggest that we might want to consider that.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I think that's good feedback. Yeah. Maybe it's a prerequisite, or maybe it's weighted, so it.
I think there's certain like, either be a good neighbor or we don't want it.
Sure.
Yeah?
I agree.
So who's doing the scoring?
Each individual council member is doing their own scoring.
So then actually you're looking for a score of 90. But those are cues. Right? So basically you're saying an average score of 10 among the 9. So we need to be clear on, are you saying it has to be an average score or an aggregate score?
As I drafted it, it's an average score.
Okay, so that needs to be clarified here, that in fact, what you're talking about is the examples you've given are for one individual member of the council to judge. Okay, so we're actually looking at 90. So within that, then another way of thinking about the community outreach part, instead of making the kind of limit that Carl was talking about, would be to include a particular board person who's doing that one, would give them a few more points in the final number. So that person would have more contacts, you would think, in the ward. They would be more responsible to a certain degree. They're also they're held more accountable by the folks in the ward. So I think that would be a way of ensuring that the individual alderperson, where development might go, would be involved with that. Because I think that allows that to be a little bit more of a two-way street. The availability of affordable housing, I would like, I don't want to get too hung up on numbers per se, but that one is super squishy because, if you had a complete NIMBY council person, they would say any affordable housing is too much. So I'm kind of thinking that it might be good there to have something of a baseline of saying, availability of affordable housing above X% or something. Right, so that then, because that would give, and that is something that would be subject to more of a numerical
Yeah.
judgment. Some of these others, I don't, like community outreach, I wouldn't want to say you've got to have X number of events, because there are different ways of doing that. And I think we want to be flexible there. And the other community benefits, those could be very different in type, so I don't see putting a baseline there. And the top one, well, ultimately, it might be good if there was cross-reference there at least. So you would say, not just the comprehensive plan, but these sections of the comprehensive plan. That's a good one. That's what occurs to me. Top of my mind.
Yes.
For community outreach, or maybe all of them, should we have like a minimum criteria with that? Because like, for example, someone reaches out to their to the older person in the ward and puts an ad in the paper. That's the only outreach they do. You know what I mean? Like, I just,
I think,
it just could be, okay, well, they tried, so we'll give them the one.
Brandon was talking about. As
Yeah.
far as having some kind of baseline. Yeah, I mean, like you said, community outreach looks different. It's not all the same.
Yeah.
Somebody calling me up on the phone and then someone handing out flyers or something.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it would be, yeah, you reach out to the alderman, you do something like either social media or newspaper, and you have like you reaching out to the alderman, so it's like, okay, these are the minimum things I have to do to ensure that I have something, because again, it's so subjective, like.
Right, thanks. So in the past, I've done this in my ward with the developer and had a community meeting with the ward and the developer, and I think that, given that opportunity to have that face to face is really.
I do too, but I also think we should let responsibility reside with the developer. They know that they are expected to do this. Let's see what they come up with. If when we get prescriptive, we're kind of saying, we're going to be in role of parents and we're going to tell you how to do your homework. It's up to them to do the homework. They know what they need to do. Let's see what they come up with. They're welcome to come to the common council member for the ward or to Bartek or anything, say, how can we win your hearts and favor? We'll say, have 6 meetings, and we'll get their feedback. But for the codify it is just, if I were a developer, I would go, get out of my face.
I don't know. I think.
I mean, that's my place, that's my position. And I think it's ironic because, you're sort of libertarian and I'm saying, hands off, these people run the show.
I think I like the minimum requirements. If they're serious about wanting to build and wanting to develop and the affordability issue, then they're gonna meet those requirements. Right, so I think if we put them up front, there'll be no, there'll be, this is what you have to do, or you cannot do it.
At minimum.
At minimum.
Just like.
At minimum.
Yeah.
And it should be, definitely should be collab with the community. Having a meeting, coming in and talking to community members about what they're putting in their neighborhood. That should definitely be a requirement.
So let me just play devil's advocate. So I'm a developer and I have a meeting and because I'm told I have to have a meeting, 3 people show up at the meeting.
Well, they did what they were supposed to do.
But did they do serious outreach?
But that's
why
it's
minimum. That's why minimum. So that would be in addition to
So that would
whatever
be a
else.
1, let's say. So a 1 is you reach out to the alderman, you have 1 community meeting, and let's say you put it in a paper. That's the bare minimum, so you're gonna get a 1. But if you have 5 meetings and, you've walked around the neighborhood with the alderman or whatever it may be, then it's that. But it's like, okay, this is the absolute minimum you have to do to ensure that the people in this area are notified of what's going on.
I can make one commitment, I'm not gonna die on this hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do, this is the crucial thing, is how do you put enough in that it's guidance, but not so much that it's proscriptive, right? So I agree with you that you don't want to be too top heavy, because then there's no reason for judgment. And because any developer that comes to us with this idea, it's going to be a unique situation. So you've got to account for that possibility, that there could be different factors involved. So.
Okay, well, this is great feedback. Anything else?
I did find that New Rochelle for the inclusionary zoning requirements is 10% to 70%.
Okay. Did you have anything else? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
RJ, I'm just gonna keep going. I just have one question about.
Thank you.
Okay, I mean, important vote.
All right. Next, communication regarding KHA, Alderman Hirsch. Ready?
Yeah, so I asked that someone come and explain, so is that gonna be you, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
About what's going on at the housing authority and the privatization, so that we as council understand what's going on.
There's no privatization of KHA.
Or development deals with Malcolm.
There are, yes, they're engaged in rehabilitation and renovation, and actually some future construction.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking, like, there's,
Thank you.
in our 2019 Fair Housing Report, it said that our housing authority was financially untenable, and we would have to take prescriptive measures, and then someone would come back to the council and explain what is happening, and possibly have to even get approvals from us. So if,
No. They don't, KHA is not part of the Kingston City government, so they don't need approvals from the common council.
all right, but it would be good to know as we are planning the zoning and the inclusionary zoning, right? We're switching, I understand we're switching over to a conversion down in Rondout Gardens of section 22, so that we're going from section 9
Yeah.
to vouchers, yes?
Mhm.
So, I mean, we can't fill so if people leave with vouchers, we can't just sort of, like we discussed with Stuyvesant Charter, we can't always have, there may not always be a voucher going in there. And so what is the plan? Is there an affordable housing deal? Is there something with Malco? Like what is the plan? There was an RFQ was put out saying that they were looking for development partners.
Sure. So, I mean, it's perfectly fine to ask them questions. So if you wrote down a bunch of questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer.
I sent in a communication that explains what is in the Fair Housing Report and what it says, that things, and so I
Right, but
asked
the
for an
Fair Housing
update.
Report is just a report. It's not a requirement. It wasn't passed by the council. It wasn't, as far as I know, approved or even put before Kingston Housing Authority. So, you know, but if you have questions,
I'm
we
asking
can-
them, so there's an
write them
RFQ.
down, send them to the KHA, send them to Benjamin, and I'm sure he can answer them.
I asked that because this plan says that they're supposed to come to the council and report what is going on, that is what I would ask to happen.
But the report has no authority. It's a report.
But we're creating housing for our city, and so if we
Who's
are
the we?
the council, we are working on the code.
Yeah.
And we could, I don't know we don't know what is going on potentially down there if with a conversion. And some of those units could be turned into a higher AMI level than what is there now. Once they run out of vouchers, we need to like plan so we know what we're talking about.
I mean, that runs against the mission of KHA. So, you know, if you have specific questions, if you would write them down.
I sent
Yeah, I
in the
think-
communication, honey.
So
I saw the
have
communication, there are no
I have the
specific questions there.
communication
It's
here.
simply saying that you want some kind of information. So,
I mean, would it make sense to, what are you asking for, like a report of what is happening right now, or how this
Yes,
is going to work, or where they are
yes.
in the process?
Yes, I mean.
well,
it
so that's a very
says-
different question. If your question is, what is KHA doing in terms of future issues related to conversion, fine, we can write that question down and take that to them and I can bring
And
it
get
back.
a report for
Yeah,
them and
but-
or have someone speak to us about it.
yeah,
Well, they put out an RFQ for all of the properties, so, and it says that our impediment to fair housing is that the KJ is untenable because of
Yeah.
finances.
I don't know how they got to that decision. I don't know how they got to that judgment. It's not the case at this point. And how old is that report?
It's from 2019 and so a new one is due. So it says
So
in
the
here,
research is from before that.
it says in here that an impediment to fair housing is that the housing authority needs to have a co-development partner.
And so that's what they've done in terms of specific projects. And they've been quite successful. The Stuyvesant Charter one is going along quite well. The new one, we're looking at some new construction and some renovation in Mondale. I think it's going quite well as well.
So can you explain it? I mean, you're on the board then.
What do you mean? Explain what?
You know what?
So,
So is anything look like Stuyvesant Charter where Van Dyke family, I understand it's been renamed, Vera and Leonard Van Dyke Apartments.
Yeah.
So in that, they are sharing ownership for how many years, 15 or 30 years?
15,
15. So do we have a similar situation at Rondout or does KHA's completely still in full ownership of it?
It's a similar agreement with Mount Hope, to work with them, co-ownership, so that, the KHA remains the primary owner. But it has to be a partnership process so that Mount Co can apply for all the necessary state monies and so forth.
Okay, so what would the AMIs be if there are not enough vouchers for all the apartments because people can switch to and port them out, their housing choice vouchers?
I'll be happy to find that out. If you write down those kinds of questions, I can look into those.
okay, good. Okay, and so you'll be able to bring that back to us.
Yeah, if I get clear questions, I'm happy to do all the research and find out what there is to know.
Great. All right, thank you. Moving on. All right, we're moving to old business. So we have on the agenda next, the watershed and ecosystem bill of rights. Julie's not here, but there is, did I see, oh yeah. You guys have a copy of the Bill of Rights? Resolution calling for a Bill of Rights for the Hudson River, also known as, how do you say this word? Picking up, Kentuck. And its watershed and ecosystem.
Yeah, Barbara reached out to everyone with that, basically, just explaining it a little more, because I remember one of the questions I had was like what our definition was gonna be of excessive noise,
Mhm.
and according to her, it came right out of the New York Constitution, so this has been an ongoing, or excuse me, if this has been in place for, if it's in the New York Constitution, then I'm satisfied with.
Everybody okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine with this. This seems to be structured in a way that it's clearly a memorializing resolution. It's not trying to have legal effect. That's what I was nervous. It was sort of like neither pillar nor post of everything.
Right.
I'm good with this.
Okay, good. All right, so then, we have a motion to accept the memorializing resolution.
Second.
That is quick on the motion itself.
Any discussion on this?
Pay for the.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposers? last thing on our agenda, that I
So
don't
I'm going for 6 months on this.
is the operation of the shared bicycle with electric assist. And Michael, you've been doing so much work on this, which we appreciate
Yes.
very much. I'm gonna give you the floor and let you talk to us about this. And Carl, I know you also was involved too. So thank you very much.
Bounce off Mike, I think he's done yeoman work here. Thank you for it.
I'll objective I need.
Okay, so, I sent everything out last week to all members of the council. I had a good meeting with Julie and a couple other concerned people in Kingston, and so I looked through the existing law, and I looked at other laws in other areas, municipalities that are going through the same thing. So again, the updates that I shared last week, and then the final updated one today is really it. The biggest thing for that is, applications must be submitted and approved by the Common Council. And the biggest one is the limiting the number of bikes that they're going to start with to 5. And then corporate counsel looked at it and she said, instead of having the periodic increase that I had originally proposed, that shall determine the number of shared system permits and permissible fleet size each year. So basically, every year they would come to us with their statistics and analytics of what happened, and then we would at that time determine what kind of incremental increase they could go. But year one would just be 5, because I know the concern is just having a company come in here with 20 or 30 bikes and go absolutely, crazy on a city when we have everything. So the thought process is limited in the beginning. That'll give us our base of what, what numbers are looking like, if there's accidents, if there's incidents, God forbid fatalities, anything like that, but we have the data and analytics behind it, and then every year they can come to the council and request an increase. That way we have the laws on the book, and then we're going from there.
So Ed, so where you would like to see it come out is, there shall be no more than X number of bicycles in year 1, and subsequent to that, it shall be determined each year what the acceptable amount is, and the Common Council will have to approve that. Is that
Correct.
what you're saying?
Yep.
I applaud half of that.
Okay.
And the half that I applaud is
You
the,
applaud with one hand.
the sound of one hand applaud. I'm all for giving the fleet operator the, not having prescriptive requirements, you actually can have no more than 10. Because who knows, maybe it'll be designed for 1,000. I mean, obviously that's, hyperbole, but we'll never know. Yeah, I know. Let's take 20, right? So we want to give them operational flexibility. So that's a great way to control and be flexible. My concern is about 5, which is your starting number. I don't think 5 is a test. 5 is so small, people don't know about it, it's being used. It's not a sample that is really useful in the real world to me. It's safe, it's not a big number, but maybe it's too small a number in terms of, it's really a pilot that they're doing, right? And you have to have a certain critical mass to have a pilot, have meaning, and be able to measure and assess from. So I would apply that same standard for the future to year 1. Come in and tell us how many you want to start with, and we'll decide. That's at work. They may come and say 5 is great. 5. They may go, we don't even want to try unless we have 20 out the street, because we won't get any data from this, right? I can't say what they're going to say, but I think we should, again, it's the same conversation. We should give them operational flexibility. We want oversight, great. But don't be prescriptive about any number. That's what I would do.
How did you come to that number 5, or whoever was involved?
Really, it was just, it was my own opinion with it, with starting a safe starting point, because I think, my initial thought is someone comes in, they're gonna wanna, I don't know, for some reason 20 was the number that always popped in my mind, and I just felt like having 20 e-bikes with people who aren't necessarily familiar with the area, everything like that, is going to cause issues. So we slowly bring it in, and we have that year 1 test or pilot, however you want to say, of, okay, this is what we're gonna start with, we're gonna see how it goes, and if things are good, then we can, increase it after that, but to me, this was a good starting point. It's not enough where, people are gonna go crazy with it, but it's also allowing these vendors to actually come in here. Because the other side of this is if we don't have these in here, someone could come tomorrow with 1,000 bikes and say, I'm here. So it was putting the rules on the table, but also setting a limit so we know, we kind of have a barometer of what's going on. And when we had our meeting, when I had a meeting with Julie, I believe last week or a week and a half ago, there was another incident where someone got hit. So that just kind of furthered this, where it's like, okay, let's just set a relatively low number, and I will agree with that. But if someone's really, determined to get e-bikes in here, they're gonna say, all right, year one's gonna be a test, and then if it's good, then,
But if I'm a fleet operator and the city is saying you can have no more than 5 to start, I'm probably gonna start looking at the city. Because for multiple reasons, including it feels like command and control from the top. I would like to be able to come and say, 5 doesn't work, but 10 is the sweet spot. How about 10? And have a conversation, right? And at that point, they know the business a lot more than you or anybody in the council. Let them educate us as to why 10 is the sweet spot, right? That's my attitude towards it, rather than, our reach kind of exceeds our grasp here. I don't think you can seriously claim the expertise about the right number of starting point, right? So we're pretending to that expertise by putting this in, right?
I don't think that's a good use of our competence, because we're not particularly competent here.
On the other,
You would say that.
since this is going down as, not as a local law, we can put in the lower number. And then if the administration, the mayor's administration is talking to companies around and they all say what Carl's saying, we can change it within a month. We can change that number by legislative action.
But then why give them the annoyance and us the extra work? And we can just say the first number must be approved by the common council.
Because we're very concerned right now with the number of crashes that have happened with bicycles and cars. And we're concerned that we don't want to do a test that leads to us being directly involved.
And they have to get approval. If they come in and go, we'd like to start with 20, we have the option at that point of going, that's too many, we're concerned, and give exactly the argument you're giving. Right?
Yeah, I prefer to go in the direction. I think.
As do I. It is, remember, this is something that we haven't done before, so why not kind of wait the water a bit to see how it's going to work?
I'm all for the outcome. The question is, how top down are we in handing out a number? And to me, this is like me claiming to be an authority in fixing a car, right? Don't give me a car to fix. The car won't go, right? We do not know what the numbers are here and what's a good number. They're the experts. Let them be the experts and let them sell us on the number. And we can be very clear going in, we're nervous about this. We want the lowest number you can get away with. And if their lowest number is 15, we can say, sorry, it doesn't work. Let's have our decision follow a conversation out of which we have more information, more knowledge, and more expertise than we have now. That's my
I'm not
proposal.
particularly sure if I want them to sell anything to us when it comes to,
There'll be someone that
This
you
project.
can always say no, right?
I can, but, and I also have, I see your hand, Tony. I also have the authority as sitting on the council to say what we want in our city, right?
Yeah, and once we pass something, then it's the administration that makes the decision. We have a lower number, we have input. If we put a higher number, we don't have input. So,
Unless we say we require it. In the, right? I'm not, I don't get, I don't, I'm not mental either, but I think we're sort of
Overreaching, overstepping? I think
I
that's our
think,
job.
I think,
it's our job.
I think, well, there's a real conversation about that, but that's a segment. No, it's more like the business environments change and in flux, and we have to be responsive to that, rather than it's like, it just feels like kind of government bureaucracy where it doesn't need to be, honestly, to me. I think we should have oversight. I think we should say that's too many. I think we should have the right to say that's unacceptable. But at least come in, it's like saying, you're selling a house, I'm not going to accept anything unless it's $200,000. Well, let me come in and tell you $180,000 in order to do the project. right? Let's have the outcome flow out of the dialogue rather than be prescriptive of it. That's my.
Well, I just think that timing, and Tony, I promise I'm coming to you.
No problem.
The timing of this right now, I think the council, I'll speak for myself, am very worried about safety in the city right now when it comes to motorists and cyclists, right? And so I think us doing our due diligence by making sure that we have control of this, for lack of a better term. I think it's important right now, because we need to make the public feel safe. And we need to also say that we don't want someone coming in with unlimited numbers of bikes or e-scooters or whatever, and saying that it's okay to do. At this particular time, I think we just need to be sensitive to that right now.
I'm going to just, I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say. I think that's about how we frame we can say all that, we can express that concern, we can express our biases, we can wrap it up in whatever bow we want to communicate what we want to communicate about the concern and the current crisis of bike safety and all that that's out there. That does not mean that we have to say, you have to start with fun. And now I'm done.
Tony?
Thank you, guys. How you guys doing? My question is, what is going to be the maximum? Is there going to be a set limit that we're going to have? And again, we're starting out with 5, if that's what the discussion is. So can it go up to 500?
Well, initially, your hand was up. But
Is there a max on this?
So initially, Tony, it was a yearly double increase. So year 1 was 5, year 2 was 10, year 3 was 20, year 4 was 40, and then after that, based on the statistics of everything, after year 5, it was, whatever the council deemed. But in talking with corporate counsel, she worded it a little differently, where again, year 1, we're going to start with 5 to see how everything goes, look at the statistics on it, and then year 2, if someone comes in and they're like, okay, after with 5 bikes, this is what happened, this is everything, I want to do 20 year 2, then the council would say, okay, we're, based on the numbers of 5, we're good with that, so we'll go up to 20. I don't think Kingston could handle 500. But,
I mean, I wasn't sure if there was a cap on it. Another question is, this is going to be any business coming in, they're going to establish their own place and store these e-bikes?
All that stuff, it's either they can agree upon on private property. For example, down into Kingston Plaza, if Brad wanted to hook up with one of these e-bike people, they could do everything there. Or if they're using city property, it has to be a determined location, and there's a lot more parameters that go involved in that. It's all in the agreement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And one thing that was added today, I'm gonna butcher his name, but I spoke to John Gross. Yes. And one thing he wanted to add to it, which I'm in full agreement, New York City just passed a law that there has to be certified batteries. So I added that onto the bottom. It was basically copying the New York City law that they passed, that their batteries have to meet certain requirements and everything like that with their bikes and matching the fine. So I added that to it as well.
So one other question then, and copycat, piggyback on that. So that means now the fire department is going to have to go and regulate these to make sure that.
No, it means if somebody's pulled over and they don't have the requisite numbers, they can get another fine. So if somebody's, I don't foresee in this that there's going to be an inspection of e-bikes.
No, but I thought the discussion was a company might be coming in to be able to, open up shop and rent out these e-bikes. Is that not what I'm hearing?
Yeah, but their batteries would have to meet those certifications. And if it's found through whatever venue that they're not in compliance, then they would be subject to that fine.
But I thought
So-
this was also speaking to any bike that's used on our street.
Correct, any e-bike in general, not just, rentals.
So that was gonna be added to our fee schedule then?
Well, it's just.
If it's gonna be a fine, doesn't it
That's
have,
a fine. That's not a fee, that's a fine.
well, doesn't it have to be somewhere established that what that fine is? Doesn't it have to be written in
It was in the
somewhere?
legislation, yeah. It's not in the fee schedule,
Okay, all right, okay.
it's in the legislation.
And it would only work then, what I'm hearing is if someone happened to get pulled over.
Mhm.
I mean,
Or
no
cause
one's
a fire.
not going, nobody's going out to look at every bike that's in the city of Kingston.
John money.
And the final thing is, because I know some of us are on finance, we did have the cost breakdown. You know, Julie's team did a good job of like comparing to other states and cities that are having the same thing. So we basically just combined everything and made it. And like I said, I put it on here. So those of us on the finance committee, because we would also have to approve that as well. So I put that on there. It's at the very last page.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to say, I'm going to say no questions, but you certainly can submit your questions.
Do you have a copy of the legislation? Because that wasn't posted online. And there is definitely some confusion amongst the Climate Smart, two boards do not understand where it is right now. They have misinformation.
We can have Elisa put it up.
Okay, but you're not gonna vote on it this month. I think I would strongly advise against it, because there's
Finance first,
massive
No, this is
confusion
the-
amongst Live Kingston
the
Police
revisions.
Advisory Council.
No, like tonight, I would say the vote would be, we're accepting these.
With the revisions.
Correct. And then then it would go to finance for the.
For these, and then come back to full council. So the only thing we're doing tonight is accepting the document with the revisions that have been made.
And then with a view towards taking to the common council in June?
This is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it goes to, it's gotta go to you.
I have a few kind of grammatical things.
Sure.
What do you mean, this?
If we're ready for that,
Well, you should make it for grammatical, we probably should make them before we accept it, right?
Yeah, you're being, maybe we didn't have the other.
Grammatical about your grammatical.
Can we go outside?
Sorry.
So the one that's added G, it needs a subject doing the action and it needs a verb.
Which section?
G, Article 3, 160-7, item G, it's in red.
Okay.
So it just says periodic reporting to Kingston City Clerk. So I think it should say that any mobility device system operator must periodically report to the Kingston City Clerk the data requested and the approved plan. So it just has to have.
Okay, I just copied that from Margaret.
Let's see. So I can write it and just give it to. Rita.
What's the periodic? Did you guys establish a time? Monthly, every 6 months?
Yeah. I think
Originally
in
it was reporting.
Quarterly reporting?
Thank you.
So while we're doing this, I just want to thank you for your hard work on it. That's a good job.
Yeah.
And we're going to be voting on this imminently, right?
Well, we're going to vote to accept the revisions that were made to this document. And then this will, because the fee schedule still has to be reviewed and worked out, it's going to go to finance and then it will come before the council.
So I would just like to go on record saying that it's my intention to vote for it, but reluctantly, because I really had concerned about the thought. I'm sorry. Overstepping. I also think it's really important to get something on the point so some pirate doesn't come in and take over. the city.
And actually, on the addition from John Gruskin, I think you just changed the word to must.
Is that ready?
That's the very last thing, it's in blue. That's okay. So that it would read, all electric bicycles sold, rented, leased in the city must be certified to review.
Do you want the other page that you changed? I'll read it right now.
Actually, that has to happen 3 times. Because it's the same.
Devices must be, mobility devices must be certified.
Yeah, just so, put the word TO. Because that means,
Right.
So, where should we put these changes so they're sure to be carried through?
Well, I'll make the changes now and then I'll resubmit it.
All right, so the action or the motion on the floor is to accept the ordinance regulating the operation of shared bicycle with electric assist, and shared electric scooter systems with the revisions that are within the document before us.
Was there a motion?
No, I said, I'm saying that's what the motion would be.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You want me to wait for you to? No. Because then, why don't, yeah, well, I want you to, make the revisions, and then just read it to me, read it out loud, what that is, okay?
Device operator. Device system operator. Must be.
Kingston City Clerk.
Just read that out loud, so change it for me, read that out loud, and then we'll get a vote.
So Article 3, section 160-7G will now state any mobility device system operator must report on a quarterly basis to the Kingston City Clerk all data requested on the approved form, which shall include number of rentals, electrical usage, accidents, claims, and/or all relevant information pertaining to the operation of the business.
Okay, so can I have a motion?
Second.
I can't.
Carl, you gotta raise your hand.
I didn't want
Faster.
to move on this.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposers? Michael, thank you once again. Carl, thank you for your input as well. Getting this done, right? It's been a couple of months, so.
Yeah.
Sigh of relief.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Yeah, the.
and then,
Oh, sorry.
so I can't turn to do that, right? Okay, so we are going to move into attorney-client session.
So what we'll need is just a motion to go through attorney-client executive session.
I'll make the motion.
And then let me just, for the record, just need to reflect what we are discussing, the city of Kingston abandoned roads and the law related to the sale of that real property owned by the city of Kingston. The section under which we're going under to conduct the executive session is 105H of the open meetings law regarding the acquisition, sale, lease of real property, or proposed
sale of properties held by a public body, which the public discussion of would potentially affect the value thereof. So those are the grounds on which we're going, and we would need a motion and a vote to go into that session.
Do I have a motion? Second? Okay. All right, Tony, do you want to be in this meeting, in this session?
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Turn
I'll just
off,
wait, I'll just wait for you guys to come back.
okay.
That's not suffering.
But clear out, very interesting.
Aiden, I think you gotta get out.
properties, right? So I just click on different property examples. So this one's in the same. So.
Did you see the first thing you put them?
Yeah, I was seeing if you. Right.
Are we back on?
We're back on?
All right. Okay, so we're going to resume our regular meeting, and I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Mike, you're so good.
Always the most enthusiastic motion.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa, good night.
Good night, thank you.